Another Rembrandt, Miss Cortez? Yes, but if I didn't show you his work in print, then I would be doing you a disservice. In addition to painting, he was a brilliant artist with ink and paper. That's what we're looking at here. The title of this is Christ with the Sick Around Him, Receiving the Children. It got the nickname 100 guilder print because that was a high price at one time, and that's how much it sold for. How much is 100 guilders? About $230,000 in today's money. So because it had been sold for that exorbitant amount at one point, it got that nickname. But what we see here, Christ with the sick around him. There's Christ receiving the children and the sick around him. Now, what Rembrandt's depicting here is a moment that is described in the Bible. Miss Cortez, you said that the Dutch Baroque, we are not going to see any sacred images. We're not going to see any public sacred images. This is a print. It's on paper, and it's one of a series of works that would have been part of a portfolio in someone's house, not in a public setting. Okay. So it's okay to do images of Christ? Yes, as long as they're not these public distracting items of worship, then yeah, it's okay. So that's what Rembrandt's doing here. And what we have is his beautiful display of light and shadow. We see this bright highlight and this fantastic halo beaming out of Jesus, and we have these beautiful velvety black inky shadows. The technique that he's using here is what we're going to focus on. This is a process of printmaking called etching. So we've seen engraving way back with Albrecht Dürer. Etching is also on a prepared plate, but instead of carving out with a brune, you use acid to eat the metal. So that's our definition up here. Etching. Cover a metal plate in acid-resistant ground and then remove the ground where ink will be exposed. Exposed metal is eaten by acid. Huh? I'm going to put a demo below this video to help demonstrate the etching process. But think of it like a copper plate that you cover with wax, and then you use your sharp stylus not to dig into the metal, but to remove layers of wax. This wax is much more friendly in terms of fixing it and also putting the hand of the artist to the plate without the need to carve. And then where you've removed the wax, you have your bare metal. When you dip this into an acid bath, the acid will eat the metal and not the wax, leaving little pock marks, little pits, so that when you then scrape off the wax, you have a plate that has pitted holes that you then stick that sticky, thick ink into and press into the paper. I hope that makes sense. But the reason that we make this distinction between engraving and etching is because with etching, you get these extremely velvety modulations of shadow. So here, this is brilliant. You can see how he's using these lines, these hashtags, right? Not searchable hashtags, but hash marks, I should say. Hash, scratch. Very similar to what we saw in etching. But then we also get this kind of muddled blur of gray. Look at that. That is etching. The pock mark of the plate creates these more softer, look, ooh, I know it's a little pixelated, but these more softer elements. So Rembrandt is using etching and the technique of scratching the wax off, but also stippling the wax off. Miss Cortez, what's stippling? Dots, like that, to get these really soft gradients of shadow. Now, in terms of him being a director of light, oh, brilliant. We see that beautiful light around Jesus, and it seems to be radiating out of him, and yet at the same time, it's misbehaving because it's created this shadow on the lower portion of him. It's created these heavy shadows that create this kind of contrast around the figure. Some of the figures that should be in light are in shadow. Here, it looks almost unfinished, but what he's doing is he's giving you the white of the paper with these lines of the ink to add that beam of light onto the figures, almost like they're whited out. And then we have the second source of light over here. Again, the Baroque, they love to give you a light source and then hide it. But it helps to define the back of the scene, give us some architectural space, some foundation for the scene. Look at this. Where is this light coming from? There's this shadow here. Is that a shadow cast from here or here? There's no shadow this way, that way, but it's so subtle, and it's a perfect example of Rembrandt's ability to direct light. Now this is a print, and so the white of the paper is the white of the light. I like this image to help us understand how big it is too. So that's it for Rembrandt. We're going to finish up with Vermeer and let me look at my notes here. And then one more artist, Rachel Roish.